August 27th, 1896. The morning sun rises slowly over the island of Zanzibar. Golden light spills across the horizon, touching the calm waters of the Indian Ocean. Palm trees sway gently in the warm coastal breeze. The air is thick with humidity, heavy and still. For a moment everything feels peaceful. The ocean is calm, the harbor is quiet, but something is wrong. Just offshore, a line of British warships sits motionless, massive, silent, unforgiving. Their steel hulls cut through the water like shadows. Their presence alone is enough to disturb the fragile calm of the morning, and their cannons are not lowered. They are aimed directly at the heart of the city, at the royal palace. Inside that palace, a man waits. His name is Khalid bin Barghash. He has declared himself ruler of Zanzibar. He has taken the throne without permission, without negotiation, without hesitation. And now he is about to test the power of an empire. A deadline has been given, 9:00 a.m. If he does not surrender by then, they will open fire. The seconds pass. The tension builds. No one moves. No one speaks. The city holds its breath. Then the clock strikes 9. And in that instant, history changes. Cannons erupt. Thunder cracks across the harbor. Fire explodes from the British ships. The roar is deafening. Shells tear through the palace walls. Wood splinters. Stone shatters. Glass explodes into the air. Smoke rises into the sky, dark and choking. People run. Screams echo through the streets. Flames begin to spread, and in less than 1 hour it's all over. This is the story of the Anglo-Zanzibar War, the shortest war ever fought. But to understand how a war could begin and end in just 38 minutes, you have to understand the world of 1896. This was the age of empires, a time when powerful nations stretched their influence across continents. Borders were drawn by force. European powers were competing for land, resources, and control across Africa. This period became known as the Scramble for Africa, and at the center of it all stood one of the most powerful empires in history, the British Empire. At its peak, the British Empire covered nearly a quarter of the world. Its influence reached every corner of the globe. It controlled trade routes, it controlled colonies, it controlled entire nations. And in East Africa, one small island held enormous importance, Zanzibar. Zanzibar wasn't just an island. It was a gateway, a meeting point between Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. Ships arrived daily, carrying spices, ivory, textiles, and goods. The markets were alive with movement. Voices filled the air, but beneath that wealth there was darkness. For decades, Zanzibar had been a center of the slave trade. Thousands of enslaved people passed through its ports. Families were torn apart. Lives were sold and traded like commodities. And the British wanted to stop it. By the mid-1800s, Britain had begun pressuring Zanzibar to end the slave trade. They used diplomacy. They signed treaties. They made promises. But when words were not enough, they used force. Slowly, over time, Zanzibar fell under British influence. Officially, it remained independent. But in reality, the British controlled everything. They influenced political decisions. They guided leadership. They shaped the future of the island. And they decided who ruled. No new Sultan could take power without British approval. That rule ensured stability. It ensured loyalty. And it ensured that British interests were always protected. For years, this system worked. There was balance. There was control. There was order. Until August 1896. On August 24th, 1896, the ruling Sultan of Zanzibar died suddenly. His name was Hamad bin Thuwaini. His death came without warning. Some believed it was natural. Others whispered about poison. But the truth was never fully known. What mattered was this: the throne was empty. And in politics, a power vacuum never stays empty for long. Within hours, a new figure emerged: Khalid bin Barghash. Khalid moved quickly. He entered the palace. He gathered supporters. And without waiting for permission, he declared himself the new Sultan. No negotiation, no approval, no delay. But there was a problem, a serious one. He had not consulted the British, and the British had not chosen him. The response came almost immediately. The British consul in Zanzibar delivered a clear message. Khalid must step down. No discussion, no compromise, no delay. The British had already selected their preferred ruler. Khalid was not that man. He was seen as unpredictable, ambitious, dangerous. If he remained, he could threaten British control, and that was unacceptable. But Khalid refused. Instead of stepping down, he prepared for war. Inside the palace, defenses were built, barricades were raised, entrances were blocked, artillery was positioned. Around 2,800 men gathered to support him. Some were trained soldiers, others were civilians. All were ready to fight. Outside, the British began their preparations. Warships moved into position in the harbor. Among them were powerful vessels of the Royal Navy, modern, heavily armed, overwhelming. Cannons were loaded, troops were mobilized. Then the British issued an ultimatum. Khalid had until 9 a.m. on August 27 to surrender. If he refused, they would fire. Now, back to the story. By the morning of August 27, 1896, everything was ready. The harbor had transformed. No longer peaceful, British warships stood in formation, their cannons aimed directly at the palace. On land, British Marines stood ready. Inside the palace, Khalid waited. He knew what was coming, but still, he refused to surrender. At 8:59 a.m., the city held its breath. Then, 9 a.m., the deadline passed. No surrender, no white flag. The bombardment was devastating. British shells slammed into the palace with overwhelming force. Walls shattered instantly. The palace, once a symbol of power, began to crumble. Khalid's forces tried to fight back. They fired their artillery, but it was hopeless. Their weapons were outdated, their positions exposed. They were outmatched in every way. One of their ships, the royal yacht, was destroyed early. It sank into the harbor within minutes. Smoke filled the air. People fled in every direction. Some jumped from windows, and then something unexpected happened. Khalid disappeared. He fled through a back exit. He made his way to the German consulate. Germany became part of the story. The Germans offered him protection. They secretly helped him escape. He was smuggled out of Zanzibar. With Khalid gone, resistance collapsed. The palace was destroyed. The defenders scattered. The war was over. Total time, 38 minutes. In less than an hour, an entire conflict had begun and ended. The British quickly restored control. They installed their chosen ruler, Hamud bin Mohammed. He aligned with their policies. Zanzibar remained under British influence. The human cost told a powerful story. Around 500 Zanzibaris were killed or wounded. On the British side, only one sailor was injured. It wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration of power. The Anglo-Zanzibar War holds a unique place in history, not because of its scale, but because of its speed. 38 minutes. Beneath that lies a deeper truth. Wars are not always decided by courage. Sometimes they are decided before they begin, through power, through influence, through control. Khalid challenged an empire, and in doing so, he triggered a response that was swift, overwhelming, and absolute. In the end, this was a reminder. In the age of empires, defiance could be crushed in less time than it takes to watch a video.